Thank you very much. Now, since we're discussing Asia, I'm going to follow an Asian tradition, which is that the first question must always be asked by the chairman's guru, who's Ambassador Tomiko. So can someone pass a mic to Tommy? There's a microphone right there. Tommy here. You can use, since he doesn't need a microphone, you can use his microphone.
I should have followed my wife's advice this morning not to come. But I like to congratulate Professor Joergen Oerstroem Moeller for having written a very profound, provocative, and idealistic book. I've tried reading the book from cover to cover, but I found it quite challenging. So I've dipped into various chapters. It's a profound book which I'll read again and again, and Joergen, I will benefit from many of your insights. I agree with you and everyone on the panel that Asia's on the rise, but I'm skeptical about your thesis that a rising Asia can shape the world. And I have 3 reasons for my skepticism.
Only 3.
And I would invite you, Joergen, and the panelists to respond to my 3 worries about Asia. First, I worry whether a rising Asia can keep peace in a family. I think we shouldn't assume that the current state will endure. I worry about the rising nationalism in China and in Japan. I worry about the huge deficit of understanding and trust between China and India. I worry about the deteriorating situations in Pakistan and Afghanistan and the potential threat that this poses to their neighbors. So my first worry is, will Asia remain peaceful? My second worry is that I see no evidence, Joergen, that Asians are looking for a different lifestyle than the lifestyle of the rich in the West. I think young Asians want to emulate the West. They are very focused on consumption. If you take Singapore as a harbinger of the future, Singaporeans are not very interested in reconciling their own lifestyle with care for the environment. No Singaporean ever asks himself or herself, what's my carbon footprint? Singaporeans are addicted to plastic bags. I'm ashamed to tell you that there are more SUVs here than there are hybrids. There is no evidence to suggest, either in Singapore or in Asia at large, that the ancient Taoist philosophy or living at one with nature is relevant to the contemporary Asia. So that's my second worry. My third worry is whether or not the rise of Asia will provoke a response from the West, which would put in jeopardy the kind of the world in which we are now living. A world which is globalized, which is undergirded by the benefits of free flows of capital, trade in services, human talent. Is the West likely to respond to the rising prosperity and power of Asia in a negative way by becoming more protectionist, by becoming more inward-looking? So these are some of my concerns.
Thank you. Why don't we start with you? Yeah, you respond first. Why don't you respond to Tommy first, and then we get the panelists maybe to talk about the in response.
Yes, thank you, Tommy. I certainly share all your concerns. I may be a little bit more optimistic than you seem to be, but I clearly see the dangers. When you talk about whether Asia can keep peace in the family, basically I would say, when I look at it, yes, it's likely, because so far I don't see any Asian nations threatening each other's vital interests. The only real question of vital interest, to my mind, is to be found with the water issue in the Tibetan plateau. If China starts to divert the water from flowing into India to flowing into China, India may have a casus belli. But basically, I think that the equation goes the other way, that both for China and India, they see that social stability is a must. To get social stability, you need to create jobs. To do that, you need higher economic growth. And the U.S. cannot any longer provide that. The U.S. is not the ultimate consumer. They have to substitute with their own domestic market, and it is easier for them to do it in common. So I think that they would be pushed by, let's say, survival and drive for social stability to work together, even if you can clearly see a lot of rivalries and animosities, but I don't think they will be strong enough. And I don't really see Japan and China going to war with each other. They will quarrel, but they do not really threaten each other's vital interests. So basically, I would say yes, there will be peace. But to my mind, it depends on one major issue, and that is whether primarily China, but also India, are willing to share the benefits of their high economic growth with the rest of Asia. And there we come back to one of my favorite points, namely economic integration. So if they are ready to make economic integration to share, I think peace will be maintained. Second, about different lifestyle, yes, I admit that, and I hear that argument always, and my answer is always again that yes, I'm hopeful, I wish it to happen. But when you say you don't see it happening, I think it is happening sometimes and somewhere. Yesterday or the day before yesterday, I had a talk with Professor Newman from Curtin University in Australia, and he told me that in Seoul they had just regenerated a river. And one of the reasons they did that in the city was that it was a sacred river. So there may be some tendencies, if you are an optimist, you can look at. But you can also walk down Orchard Street and then be a pessimist. But my main point is again that sooner or later, and probably sooner, you'll come to the point where this lifestyle is not any longer viable. And then they will have to look for an alternative. How do they react to that? The third point, whether the West will react, yes, certainly the West will react. As a European, I would say that the Europeans had come to grips with the realities. Europe is not any longer driving for a front seat. It has realized what is happening in the world. It's a different mentality in Europe nowadays. I cannot see Europe project power or compete for world leadership. I may put it in the way that Europe is very often looking at the outside world. What can we do to help? And not to safeguard our own interests, so to speak. With the United States, I think the United States will have to decide whether yes or no acceptance of a strong economy in Asia will help the U.S. to solve their own economic problems. If the answer to that is no, then there will be a conflict. Whether it will be an armed conflict or whether we can confine it to economics, I don't know. If the U.S. comes to the conclusion, which to my mind is inevitable, that the U.S. economic problems can only be solved by a strong economy in Asia, the U.S. will look at the rise of Asia in a benevolent attitude and help it as it did with the European integration. Very much depend upon how U.S. judges the repercussions of a strong Asia on its own economy.